What's going on, everyone? Today we've got a special video for you here on the channel. Today we're going to be going over how you can master the 4-2-3-1 within FM. We're going to be covering the best rules to utilize within a 4-2-3-1, the best player instructions to use in a 4-2-3-1, as well as the best tactical instructions as well, and much more. So without further ado, let's get into the ultimate guide on the 4-2-3-1. Now, the 4-2-3-1 is probably one of the most common formations that not only you utilize within FM, but that you probably see elsewhere with the AI using as well, maybe other human managers also, but even in reality within real-life football. Now, one reason for that is that it is a very good formation to utilize, but another thing is the versatility that it allows you to have within your side. Because when it comes to 4-2-3-1, especially within FM, you can line up with two defensive midfielders like this, bump them up to central midfield and rock two central midfielders, or play something a little bit asymmetric like this. And all of them offer something different due to their versatility, which that mainly does come down to the roles that are utilized and how you want your players playing. Because even though a majority of the time we're going to be utilizing the 4-2-3-1 formation as we see here, the best way to get the most out of a 4-2-3-1 is to have it build up in these two formations. That is the 3-2-5 or the 2-3-5. And both of those are utilized big time by Pep Guardiola. He utilizes both, and he's very good at getting his team to shape into that on the fly. And that is due to how he instructs his players to play, which that is exactly what you're going to be doing with your sides as well, especially once we get into what the best player instructions are and roles. Because yes, it might be a standard 4-2-3-1 like we see here on screen right now, but when you utilize roles like this tactic here in this asymmetric version where you have a segundo volante, an inverted wingback, an inverted fullback, it's going to play completely differently and build up completely differently as well, and end up building up like a 3-2-5 or a 2-3-5. So I guess first things first, what are the roles that can help you get the most out of a 4-2-3-1? We're going to start in the defense. Defensively speaking, the best roles, especially within my opinion, for a 4-2-3-1, if you're looking at your center backs, it's going to be either the ball playing defender or the central defender. If you like to use libero, you're definitely going to need to utilize those inverted fullbacks. Which, speaking about the fullback area, for the fullback area, inverted fullbacks, wingbacks, and inverted wingbacks are going to be your best bet. The complete wingback is also pretty good as well. But when we get into midfield, you'll notice on two of those tactics, one I had them in defensive midfield and in the other I had them in central midfield. Central midfield is definitely a more aggressive type of 4-2-3-1. A lot of us used to utilize that in years past, but now this year, having them in defensive midfield definitely is a better bet. However, you can still do very well if you wish to do a more aggressive 4-2-3-1 by having them in central midfield. When it comes to central midfield and defensive midfield, what are the best roles to utilize within a 4-2-3-1, whether you're trying to go the kind of a little bit more defensive route or the more aggressive route? I would definitely suggest either using a ball-winning midfielder, deep line playmaker, or segundo volante when you are doing a defensive midfield version. All three of those roles are absolutely fantastic. It can all be played with each other. You might be a little hesitant to play two playmakers together, but I've played two segundo volantes together this year, and they're absolutely fantastic. And when it comes to central midfield, you'll definitely want to still utilize like a ball-winning midfielder if you're not using them in that defensive area. Then you're also going to want to utilize probably an advanced playmaker. Deep line playmaker also works there as well. Then you can also utilize a box-to-box midfielder. Very, very good role this year. And the central midfielder, either in support or attack, are the ones I suggest for that. Now, when it comes to the number 10 spot within your tactic, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. You'll definitely want to utilize some sort of playmaker. So the advanced playmaker definitely comes in clutch, as you can use it either on the support or the attack duty. The attacking midfielder, as well as you can customize them to your heart's desire. You can play them on support or attack there. But the shadow striker on attack is also very good because not only are they a playmaker, but they are a big-time goal scorer as well within a 4-2-3-1. When it comes to your wings, the winger roles that I would suggest using are either the inside forward, either on support or attack, the inverted winger on those same roles, or the winger also on the same roles. The winger I have really enjoyed this year because you can instruct it to cut inside and it plays like an inverted winger, so you really don't even need to utilize that role, you can kind of have your own custom version of it by utilizing the winger role. When it comes to your striker role, the one that I would suggest using over anything else is the advanced forward, the pressing forward, and the complete forward. The pressing forward and complete forward both come on all three roles. I would suggest using them either in support or attack, whereas the advanced forward only comes on the attack duty and is also the most overpowered striker role. Now, when it comes to the mentalities within a tactic, there are three that I would definitely utilize within a 4-2-3-1. However, I think one reigns supreme over all the rest. The three mentalities that I would suggest using are balanced, positive, and attacking. No matter what level your side is at, you can definitely utilize an attacking mentality. It is a little bit more risky than the other two, but that is the mentality that you need to use basically on any tactic that is going to give you a real shot at taking down the big dogs. Now, for the in possession and transition and out of possession instructions, it really all depends on what type of 4-2-3-1 you're going for. So I'm going to show you three different ones and how I approached all three. The first one we're going over is my 4-2-3-1 Prancing Pony, which is kind of geared towards those mid to lower table sides. With the in possession instructions, I have us playing fairly narrow. I want us to keep a little bit compact. The reason for that is because I wanted us to have shorter passing directness. Playing more narrow and having shorter passing directness is definitely going to help out a lot. However, if you wish to be a little bit wider, you're definitely going to want to either go standard or even more direct. When it comes to the approach play though, you'll see that I have us playing out from the defense. I will have us playing out from the defense on all three of these tactics just because that is the best way to progress the ball up the pitch nowadays. But you'll see that I have overlap on the left and overlap on the right. The reason for that is due to the wingers and the wing backs. All of my players, especially the central players, are going to be looking for the overlaps from the wing backs and the wingers as well. Because if our winger, say our left winger, comes down around here on a defensive duty and he comes up going past the deep line playmaker or even the ball winning midfielder, they'll look to play the ball wide to him on the overlap. Same thing goes for the wing back on either side, wingers either side. So when you are putting on the overlap left, overlap right, or underlap left, underlap right, it isn't necessarily basically saying due to where these arrows are coming from, it looks like it's coming from the wingbacks. It looks like it's only an instruction for the wingbacks. It's not. It is instructing your entire team to look for players within your side, within your tactic, making those overlapping runs. Now, when we are looking at the final third, you have your crossing options as well as how you want your team to approach play within the final third. Majority of the time, I will have it on work the ball into the box. Shoot on sight is basically for teams that are pretty good either at long shots or have great finishing ability. That is when you use it. Or if you are in utter desperation needing a goal late, that is when you kind of throw that on. And then hit early crosses is for those teams that really want to utilize their crossing abilities. So you need to make sure that your team, if you do intend to use that your team is pretty good at crossing. Which, speaking of, you'll see that I have on whipped crosses. There's low crosses, whipped crosses, floated, and mixed. I would suggest either going mixed or low. However, you will notice that I did use whipped crosses on this. The reason why I use whipped crosses, it is harder for the opponent to deal with them. And if you have a team that is pretty good at crossing, then they are going to be able to capitalize on that much more often. And when it comes to the tempo, I have it on slightly higher. The lower you go, the more possessive you're going to be. However, even though I do have it on slightly higher, we're still a pretty possessive team, but we're much more aggressive and it helps in our gegenpressing style. So that is how you kind of need to look at your tempo. Do you want it to be high intensity or do you want it to be a little bit more slow and methodical? For the in transition, all you need to do every single time is make sure that you're counter pressing and you are on the counter. That is basically the best bet for every single tactic this year. If you have it on regroup and hold shape, you're definitely not going to have the same oomph about your tactic that you would with a counter press and counter. A majority of the best tactics this year both utilize that. I know it annoys a lot of people that there's a lot of pressing tactics out there. It is the best way to do everything now, unfortunately. Even if you might not like it, you definitely need to consider using it. And due to my high intensity with this tactic, I have us distributing quickly to the fullbacks and the center backs. So basically just distribute across your defense. And with the distribution type, you can tick on whatever you want. The majority of the time your goalkeeper's not going to listen to you, but when they do, they will tend to do what you have ticked. In this scenario, it is roll the ball out. So I'm just getting the ball, rolling it right out to a defender, and we go immediately. And then with the out of possession, it is a lot like some of the transition instructions. You want the high press line of engagement and a higher defensive line. Those are the two best things that you can do within FM24 this year. However, you can also use a mid block. A mid block does work as well with a higher defensive line. Don't really suggest using a low block this year. It just doesn't have a great effect. If you're a team that is scared as all get out by going up to the Premier League and you shouldn't be up there yet, or going up to La Liga and you shouldn't be up there yet, then yeah, probably rock something like that, but just know you are kind of screwing yourself by doing so. Playing a higher defensive line in a mid block, or both with a high line and high press line of engagement, that is going to give you the best bet for taking on the big dogs. And when it comes to trigger press, I usually have it on more often, or much more often, depending on how intense I want the style of football to be with whatever 4-2-3-1 I might be baking. And even though this is geared towards mid-table to lower table sides, I know that they can keep up with this intensity. So now we're going to take a look at the more aggressive 4-2-3-1 with those defense midfielders now sitting in central midfield. One thing you'll notice right away is that I am now instructing them to underlap on the left and the right instead of overlap. The reason being is because I want them to look for the underlapping runs from the fullbacks, ball playing defenders, central midfielders, and that number 10. The reason for that is because on the fullbacks, I have them as sitting narrower and to get further forward. So they will sit more narrow and get further forward, hence the underlap. Same thing with the central midfielders. They are underlapping. I want them to kind of be a focal point within the tactic. Same with the number 10. And ball playing defenders are fairly aggressive, so they will get up in the play from time to time, and when they make these underlapping runs, they will be kind of one of those main targets. If the fullback is a little bit out wide, or the wingers see that run being made, they know, okay, I'm going to hit the ball point defender on that underlap. Once again, we have play out from the defense. We have fairly narrow, work the ball into the box, shorter passing directness, and slightly higher tempo. Basically, the same as the previous tactic, except for these underlapping runs instead of the overlaps, and the final third crosses are now on low crosses. With the transition instructions, it's basically the exact same with that counter press and counter, distributing across the defense, except distribute quickly is taken off, and I allowed the distribution type to kind of be anything that they seem fit at the moment, and that out of possession is the exact same as well. So one thing to take away from that version of the 4-2-3-1 is, being that I have certain instructions on the players, I had to kind of tinker with the instructions for the tactic as a whole to make sure that we capitalize on those player instructions, which is something you're definitely going to want to be doing as well. And now we're going to highlight the most versatile one of these 4-2-3-1s, my asymmetric 4-2-3-1 target practice, where it has quite a few different things to it. Everything is basically the same from the last tactic, except I have taken off underlap on the right. They're now looking just for the underlap on the left side with that inverted wingback and the segundo volante. The transition instructions are the exact same as well, and the same thing goes for the out of possession. Now with this tactic, there's a lot less more kind of relying on the tactic instructions and more so on the player instructions. That's what we're going to get into now. When you are creating a tactic, any tactic, it doesn't have to necessarily be just this 4-2-3-1 type style. You're going to want to make sure that you kind of know what each role is going to be doing within that tactic, so that you can help all the other roles capitalize. A perfect example of that is within this 4-2-3-1 target practice, we have an inverted wingback and a segundo volante, both on the left-hand side. This helps both roles. Why is that? Well, the inverted wingback is going to roam from its position and sit narrower. So majority of the time, it's going to find itself within this area, as it is going to invert into defensive midfield. So that led me to having the Segunda Volante, who is a late arriver, going into channels and tackling harder. The only reason I don't have it on attack is because in the situations that I kind of want it to play a little bit safer, that is why I have it on support. If it were on attack, all the time it would be getting further forward. However, it knows when the time is right, that is when it moves forward, which in turn allows that inverted wingback to move into the empty space, because the majority of the time when using an inverted wingback, they tend to get blocked by other roles, and you can't really get the most out of that role. So if you are using something like an inverted wingback, you're going to want to make sure that you have a role like a defensive midfielder or Segunda Volante that you instruct to get forward. Same with a regista as well. If you had a deep line playmaker and ball winning midfielder, the deep line playmaker or ball winning midfielder would get in the way of the inverted wingback and would disrupt what that role actually does. But with the instructions that I have on all of these roles here with this tactic, it allows us to build up into the 3-2-5. So once we are kind of built up, fully fledged into this tactic, this is how we basically line up in that 3-2-5 once everything kind of moves together to be able to create what I wanted from the instructions on the roles as well as the instructions within the tactic. However, when it comes to something a little bit more simple like the 4-2-3-1 prancing pony, this one is a pretty standard 4-2-3-1 that plays basically how any 4-2-3-1 usually does when it is pretty basic, I guess is the best way to put it. You have those wingbacks moving up, you got the inside forwards cutting in, basically acting as like wide strikers, you've got your advanced playmaker and your deep line playmaker, both with the creativity in the side, your ball winning midfielder making sure that they win that ball and move it off quickly. However, to get the most out of a standard tactic like this, you are going to need just a few simple instructions on these roles. These are the ones that I suggest making, especially for your striker and for your wingers. On your striker, if it's not an advanced forward on attack, you're going to want to instruct them to shoot more often. It creates more goal scoring opportunities for you. When it comes to those inside forwards or wingers in general, you're going to want them aiming their crosses centrally and shooting more often as well. Even if it is on the winger duty, they are basically instructed on the standard default instructions as you see here in the light green. Wingers are instructed to cross more often. So if you have shoot more often and cross more often, you'll probably think, okay, that's going to contradict itself. It really doesn't. It actually helps it perform even better. With your number 10, you are going to want them basically, if they are in a wide area, whipping those crosses in centrally as well. But another thing that I would add on to number 10, even though I didn't do it in this tactic necessarily because I just felt that it didn't really need it, move into channels. I suggest putting on all your number 10s. The reason being is because they can move into those channels, intercept passes, move the ball off, and you're on the counter immediately again. Your number 10 can be very good for you if they have some good defensive aspects to their game by utilizing the move into channels instruction. Now in a 4-2-3-1, if you're utilizing wingbacks, you're going to want to make sure that you have them crossing more often and having those crosses aimed at center. However, if you're using an inverted wingback, they aren't really going to be doing so, and if you're using an inverted fullback, same thing there. They won't really be doing it. However, in my 4-2-3-1 Gem of Gems, I have fullbacks. The reason why I had fullbacks is because I kind of wanted to customize the wingback fullback role into exactly what I wanted it to do. And I do have crosses aimed at center here because sometimes if they don't choose to sit narrower, they will be getting further forward and they will be wider. Hence I have that get further forward. Yes, it does say sit narrower, but they can still choose to be out wide and do the same thing. And that is where those crosses aimed at center really comes into play. Now with the central midfield and defensive midfield areas, one of the instructions that you're definitely going to want to make sure that you can have on your roles, if you're able to put it on there, if it isn't already on there by default, once again is moving to channels. You want your players kind of taking up as much space as possible and closing down on those passing lanes. And once again, on this 4-2-3-1 Gem of Gems, I have move into channels on here as well. So all three of these players are moving into channels, making sure that they are cutting down as much space and putting as much pressure on the opposition as possible. So all in all, with those instructions, with player instructions that is, you're definitely going to want to make sure that whatever you are wanting to do with your 4-2-3-1, you're making sure that you're helping all the roles capitalize on the top potential of their ability. Because like that example that I had with the inverted wingback, you don't want to be playing an inverted wingback and then have a role blocking what it's going to actually be able to do, because then it makes utilizing that role absolutely pointless. So make sure that you have roles that complement each other. That'll help you get a lot more out of your tactics, not just 4-2-3-1s, but tactics as a whole. Now, one thing that'll help you really get the most out of your tactic is one thing that probably not a whole lot of people consider, and that's opposition instructions. This screen right here probably looks pretty scary for a majority of you because some of you may have never even utilized it. And for those of you that haven't, I definitely suggest you do start utilizing it because it's going to help you big time, especially against those big time opponents. Now, what are those opposition instructions that can help you kind of lock down your opponent from the get-go, whether you're using a 4-2-3-1 or any other tactic? Because two of the biggest counter tactics to a 4-2-3-1 is the 4-3-3 and the 4-2-2 narrow. The 4-4-2 also can be a little bit of a pain, but I've definitely figured that out. It's pretty easy to beat it now. However, that 4-3-3 or especially that 4-2-2 narrow, those are a pain in the butt. So what you're going to want to be doing is on your right back and wing backs of the opponent, you're going to want to trigger press them and show them on to their weaker foot. Like I said, you're going to do that with the right back and the left back, but also if they are playing wing backs, you're going to do the exact same thing there. The reason why we do this is because it takes away their wide creativity, because if they're using a narrow formation such as that 4-2-2 narrow, those wing backs are going to supply a lot of the opportunities out wide unless they have instructions on those roles or are utilizing roles that can get out wide. Majority of the time you're going to be crippling their wide creativity, forcing the ball inside. It takes away two entire portions of the pitch from them. Because by trigger pressing those wingbacks or fullbacks and also showing them onto their weaker foot, when the majority of them are only good with one foot, that is usually the dominant side that they are on, it is going to cripple their playmaking ability. Now, like I said, the 4-4-2 can also be quite a pain at times. When it is, you're going to want to show those midfield wingers onto their weaker foot. If they are a side that is kind of a mid to low table side, that is what you do to them, because those are the ones that can, they're kind of like trap games. If they're a team that is in like 17th out of 20, they're coming up against you in poor form, they're playing a 4-4-2, that should scare you, because the 4-4-2 with those teams can definitely help them overperform. But if they're a better team and they're utilizing a 4-4-2, you're going to want to trigger press just like you do to those wingbacks and fullbacks. Because once again, it takes away that wide creativity, forcing the ball centrally. And now we get to those front four positions. The number 10, those wingers, the strikers. How do we lock them down? The wingers, you kind of play it safe. You just show them on to their weaker foot. However, if they are really good, say you're playing against a PSG. I've been doing this a lot because I keep on getting them within the Champions League within my Lazio save over on Twitch. What I end up doing is I tight mark always, I trigger press, tackle harder, and show on to the weaker foot. Those players then cannot do anything. They are on full lockdown. They need quite a bit of luck to get a goal by you doing this. If you're playing another 4-2-3-1, you're going to want to do that not only to both wingers, but that entire front four. As you can see right here, I have it on the right winger, the number 10, the left winger, and the striker. But those with a key eye probably notice that I don't have trigger press on the number 10. That is because you're going to want to tight mark them instead of trigger pressing them. If you are pressing that number 10, it's going to allow your side to kind of make a mistake or two sometimes. Then that number 10 exploits it, and then doing these instructions is basically useless at that point. So just make sure that you're tight marking that 10, not trigger pressing that 10 if you're playing against an elite side. However, if you're not playing an elite side and it's a mid-table to lower table type side, the only one you're not going to have only show onto the weaker foot on is the number 10. You're going to want to tight mark them and also show onto the weaker foot. And with these opposition instructions I just went over, this doesn't only apply to a 4-2-3-1, it applies to any tactic that you may be using. So definitely feel free to implement this in whatever save you may be doing, even if you're not using the 4231. But alright, that just about does it here for today's video. Hope you all did enjoy. Absolutely love doing videos like this. All the tactics I showed today in today's video, I'll be linking those videos down below in the description for you guys to check out if you wish to give those tactics a go, or if you wish to see how I break them down individually so you can get an even more in-depth overview, especially on those specific tactics. But if you happen to enjoy today's video, please feel free, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Subscribing is 100% free, so why not hit the sub button. Right now on screen will be popping up my most recent video, which is a video from my new series, Rising Tides, here on the channel. So if you wish to check that out, definitely feel free to do so. Well, until next time, everyone, have a good one. Bye-bye.